An invitation to join in the governing of Britain. That is how David Cameron described his manifesto for the election. The Conservatives say they want a big society, not a big government, with the public having a greater say in how their lives are run. Mr Cameron said that under the Tories it would be easier for parents to set up their own schools and local communities would have the right to buy their local post office or pub. Our political editor Nick Robinson reports on the manifesto that the Conservatives hope will return them to power.
He is the fourth Tory leader to say it's time for a change from Labour. For him, a fourth defeat is unthinkable. Today, David Cameron pointed the way to the big idea he hopes will take him to Downing Street. The Conservative manifesto was launched here at Battersea Power Station, a great British institution in need of regeneration. Just like the country, they said. Its message helpfully spelt out, we're all in this together.
It's an invitation to the whole nation. We will give you the power so you can take control. Be your own boss, sack your MP, choose your own school, own your own home, veto council tax rises, vote for your police commissioner, save your local post office, see how your government spends your money.
That spelt out what he meant by the curious title of this manifesto, an invitation to join the government of Britain. It didn't spell out, though, what a smaller government committed to cutting the deficit faster would actually mean for people.
Are you inviting them to believe that you can spend less, tax less, and somehow magically get more?
His reply, I'm only promising what any business leader would, to deliver more for less.
Yes, we are saying to the British people that we have to spend less. Everybody knows that. Every party is saying that at this election. But uniquely, we are able to say to people, we actually have a way of trying to get more for less.
But what evidence was there, he was asked, that busy people had the time, let alone the willingness, to do more for themselves?
I think the politicians have been treating the public like mugs for about 40 years, pretending that actually we, the politicians, have all the answers. Just give us some power, we'll pass another Queen's speech, we'll pass a few more laws, we'll issue some regulations, we'll spend a bit more money, and it will all get better. And it's a lie.
The Tories say the ideas that they unveiled today amount to the biggest call to arms for a generation, that what this manifesto contains is a recipe to allow people in their own communities to take control of their own lives, having a referendum, for example, on the level of the council tax or any other local controversy. Parents are being told that if they think their kids aren't getting the education they deserve, the Tories will sweep away the rules that make it difficult for charities and voluntary groups and groups of parents to set up their own alternative schools. And the Tories say that if your local pub or library, your park or local community facility are under threat, they would introduce a community right-to-buy scheme.
What are you planning?
Gordon Brown, on a visit to Derby, argued that Tory talk of more power to the people really meant less money for what the people really want.
There's a complete hole at the centre of the Conservative manifesto. Nothing in it to help the recovery. Indeed, the measures would put the recovery at risk. Nothing to guarantee that our policing and our health and our schools are going to be properly improved over the next few years, but a plan to put spending in these down.
Nick Clegg, on a visit to Bradford, was equally scathing.
David Cameron seems to think that it's just his turn to govern. He seems to think that he should just inherit power rather than earn it. And you can't trust the Conservatives. I mean, they've just launched a manifesto in a power station that doesn't generate power. It's a manifesto of style over substance.
People have switched off this election so far, David Cameron admitted today. He hopes his big idea will change that. But what he knows is that any big idea in politics carries with it a mighty big risk. Nick Robinson, BBC News, Westminster.
So the idea that underpins the Conservative manifesto is a transfer of power from government to people in areas such as schools and policing. But with our busy lives, are we likely to get involved? Our special correspondent, Richard Bilton, has been gauging the mood in the constituency of Burton in Staffordshire.
The second week of the Easter holidays, and dozens of parents grateful for somewhere to take the kids. This is Horninglow Park in Burton, and these are coveted voters. This is a seat the Conservatives have targeted. So how did that message of empowerment, of making it easier to take control of schools, go down here?
Yeah, I agree with that, because we're the ones that want best for our children and we know what our children need. And to be honest with you, if we all came together and did it, then I'm sure that if we all stuck together, then more things would happen, and they'd happen quicker as well, to be honest with you.
I don't think so. Too many different people have got too many different views and opinions on things. You would clash, wouldn't you?
Those views count because this is such an important seat for the Conservatives. In fact, Burton is an interesting challenge for David Cameron. For starters, it's a very working-class constituency with a few prosperous villages on the outskirts. And then there's the economy, which still has a high proportion of manual workers.
Beer is still a big job provider in Burton. 2 big breweries and 4 smaller suppliers like this one. Now, John's one of the owners, but used to be an IT manager, and he's not convinced that empowering works.
It's a sad fact of life that the people that potentially will get involved in this are the people who have got axes to bear and will not necessarily add value.
And what about those who serve and drink his beer?
It's a good idea. It's about time we got a say in something.
On the face of it, it's a good idea, providing it doesn't start to split communities apart.
I met plenty of people today who liked the idea of empowerment, but others weren't sure how it would work here and whether it would really make a difference. Richard Bilton, BBC News, Burton.
The Conservatives say they'll have an emergency budget within 50 days of taking office. Well, let's look at some other manifesto pledges. No rises in council tax for the next 2 years. A pay freeze for public sector workers earning more than £18,000 next year. A limit on work permits given to non-EU migrants. And allowing voters to force a by-election if they want to vote out an MP. Well, Nick Robinson is in Westminster for us now. Nick, so far we've had Labour and Conservative manifestos. Now, what do you think is the big difference between them?
Well, I think it's intriguing, isn't it? Because last week, let's be honest, this election failed to capture people's imagination. I think many people felt they either had to be an economist or have a calculator to make sense of the debate going on. Here is something that is much simpler. Yesterday, when Labour unveiled their manifesto, they essentially said government can be on your side, and what government can do is give guarantees of what you can expect from public services, just like you get on the high street. Today, the Tories said, yes, government can still do many things, but actually it needs to be pushed along by the public. It needs to be chivied, and sometimes they need to do things more for themselves. It is a gap in philosophy, not merely about numbers, George, and it means that people can't anymore say there's no real choice.
Nick, I want to return to the question you raised. What evidence is there that people have either the time or the inclination to get involved?
Well, on the one hand, you find evidence to the contrary. In other words, it's very difficult for school governors to find new school governors, for those bodies that supervise the police to find it. On the other, there are 300 groups that are currently telling the Conservatives, and there's a charity involved, that they do want to set up new schools. Now, the Tories believe that that wouldn't just be good for those parents, it would shake up the system. It would give it a kick up the pants, if you like. What Labour and others will say is, hold on, won't that divert money? Won't it be divisive? Won't some schools be bad and some schools be good? There's an idea and an appetite, all right. The question, though, is really whether it's positive for all.
Nick, thank you. And there's more about the campaign later in this programme and on the BBC News website, where you'll find more detail on the Conservative manifesto. That's at bbc.co.uk/election.